everyone. Welcome to Revelation Quilts. Today we're going to learn this fast and easy block using 5-inch charm squares. And I have 2 packs of 5-inch charm squares here. I have 2 batiks. One is a beautiful batik pack of charm squares. And all these colors are just very tropical and very beautiful. And the other is a pack of white or off-white batiks. And so we're going to make an awesome quilt using these 2 things. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is take one of each, one colored one and one light one. We're going to stack them on top of each other. And let me just warm up my iron here. And I'm going to stack them up so they match really nicely. It looks like one of my charm packs is just a hair bigger than the other one, but that's okay. We are going to make do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take and we are going to lop off 1 inch off of the end. So we are just going to make sure they're stacked up real nice here. Okay, so we're going to take off 1 inch off of the end. So I know a charm square is 5 inches, so I'm just going to put it on the 4-inch line like this. And I'm going to take my cutter and I'm just going to do a 1-inch strip off the end. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in another inch and take off another inch off of this charm pack. So what we have then is we have one square that is 3 inches wide and then 2 1-inch strips. So we're going to separate these out and we are going to just mix up the strips like this. Just like this and like this. And we are going to sew these together. So let's take these over to the machine. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this middle strip here and I'm just going to turn it over and sew down a 1/4 inch down this side. And then I'm going to take this strip and do the same thing. I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch. Let me get it lined up here. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch down the side. And I'm going to chain piece these 2 and I'll show you how to do that. So here we are at the machine. I'm just going to take my strip. I've got them right sides together. Well, it's a batik, so there really is no right sides, but I'm just going to take a 1/4 inch and sew a 1/4 inch right down the side. I'm going to leave that on the machine. I'm going to take my next piece. I'm going to do the exact same thing. So just line them up like that and put them right on the machine and go 1/4 inch. Just cut them apart like that. And let's take these back to the cutting board where we're going to iron them. Now when we iron these, we are going to iron them so the seam allowance, which is the space between where we've sewn and the edge, that we want that to go towards the strip, towards the 1-inch strip. So we're just going to iron that towards the 1-inch strip on both of them. Here's the other one. So you should have 2 pieces that look like this. Now we're going to go back to the sewing machine and we are going to take this other strip and we're going to sew it right sides together to the little strip that we've sewn. We're going to do the same with the yellow one. So we're just going to make another seam right down the sides on both of those. So I've got my piece here with the 3-inch strip and the 1-inch strip. And I'm just going to take this extra 1-inch strip, and I'm going to line it up to the edge just like before, and we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam, and we're going to sew right down that edge. Leave it on the machine, and we're going to take the second one and line up that strip with the other strip that we've sewn on. 1/4 inch. Line it up all nice and go to town. I'm just going to cut them apart. And we are going to press that so that on the back the seams will meet like that. And so they're almost covered up. So it looks like there's not even a strip in there. And that's what it looks like from the outside. We're going to do the same one with this. When we press it, we're going to press it to the inside so that those go together like that. So we can finger press it here at the sewing machine so it goes in like this. So you're going to have two pieces that look like this. So let's go back to the ironing board and we will press those. So like I said, we're going to press these so that when you turn it over, it just covers that strip and you can't even see it. But from this side, you can see it very nicely. Let's do the same with this one. And that's it. That's what we're going to do. And then what we do is we have these two like this, and we're going to put them like this, and we're going to turn this over and just sew it together just like this. Just sew right along there. So start with your colored strip or your colored block, and because that's going to be on the end. So start with that block, and then you're going to take your block with your background fabric and you're going to fold it over and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch down this side. So I'm going to go do that right now. So I've just sewn those together, and when I open it up, this is the block that you're going to have. So I'm going to press the seam towards the right, my right, your left. And that's it. That's the block. And we're going to do that to all of your squares. So we'll take the next one. We're going to do the exact same thing. Scoot you over. The exact same thing. We're going to stack them on top of each other. And we're going to cut off 1 inch from the end. And then we're going to cut off 1 more inch from the end. I got an extra little guy there. So we're just taking pieces and swapping them out like this. We're going to sew all these 3 pieces together, and I will do that, and I will be right back. Okay, so I did the second one, and I'm just going to iron those so that on the back, these go back together. So almost looks like one whole piece of fabric again. Okay, and I'm going to do the second one. Okay, so there you have it. That is the block. Now I'm going to show you how to put them all. So do that to all of yours, and then I'll show you how to put them together. So I've done the first two blocks. So what we're going to do is the first block, we've got starting with the yellow, and then a white strip, then a yellow strip, and then a larger white, and so on. The second block is exactly the same, but what we're going to do is we're going to turn it around this way so that when we sew them together, it's going to look like this. So that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, I'm just going to trim this up a little bit because I've got some, since my charm packs are a couple different, they're tiny. One is a tiny bit bigger than the other. We're going to just even this up a little bit, and I am using these lines on my ruler to square it up a little bit so that's all nice and even. So I have a nice even edge. I'm going to do the same to this one. Just square it up a little bit. So I have a nice even edge to sew along. There we go. So the first one is going to go this way, and the second one will get turned over just like this. And we're going to sew them together. Now the only seam that we have to worry about is this one right here. And we've ironed the seams so that on this one, the seam allowance is going that way. And on this one, the seam allowance is going the same way. It's not supposed to. So we're going to fix it. Let's see. Oh, this is the one that needs to get fixed. So let me iron this the way I want it to go. There. That's what I want it to look like on the back. So this seam is going in, and then this one is going out. So now, when we sew them together, this one should be going out as well. So now when we sew them together, like this seam allowance is going that way, and then underneath, this seam allowance is going the other way. So when we sew them together, if you can see how they are nesting together like this, can you see that? So it just nests together like this. I hope that I didn't confuse you. So we're just going to sew these together like this and like this. And let's go do that right now. So I've got these at the machine. Make sure my seams are all nesting the way I want them to. And we're going to sew a 1/4 inch down this block. Making sure I'm all lined up. Okay, let's go back to the ironing board and see how that looks. So here I've got my seam. Just going to open it up. So there is your finished block. So we're going to do that to all the rest of the blocks. In this charm back, I have, I believe, 40 squares. And there's 2 of every colored square. And then the backgrounds are just various white or whitish backgrounds. So we're going to do this to all of our blocks. And then I will meet you at my design board and we'll see what that looks like when it's all put together. Now, because my 2 different charm packs were cut a little bit differently in size, I mean, just tiny fraction different, but when you sew everything together, it does make a big difference. You can see how this edge changes. So the finished block, this finished block should measure 7.5 by 9 when you're all done. So the 7.5 this way and 9 inches this way. So we're going to square this up, and how we're going to do that is the 7.5 this way. Half of 7.5 is 3.75. So we're going to take our ruler and we're going to put our 3.75 line right on this center seam that we made. And we're just going to square it up. And then we're going to turn it over and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to put our 3.75 line right on our center seam, and we're going to trim to take care of that loose end. And then on this side it should measure 9, and half of 9 is 4.5. So we're going to put our 4.5 line right on this center seam, and we're going to trim that because there'll be 4.5 inches on either side of the center to make 9 inches. I'm going to turn it around and do the same thing. 4.5 inch line, and that'll even up those ends. So now we have a nice square block just like that. All right. Okay, so I finished all my blocks and I've got them up on my design wall. And by the way, I ended up finishing them 7 inches by 9 inches because of the way that my charm pack was cut kind of wonky. So let's talk about my design wall. I know that people go out and buy these fancy design walls that cost a lot of money, but seriously, I bought a tablecloth at Walmart. Just one of those vinyl tablecloths, and I think it was $3.50, maybe even $4. And it's just the tablecloth. It's the red and white checkered tablecloth, which is kind of neat because it's got, even though I have the red and white checkered part vinyl facing the wall, it gives me lines on the back of my design wall so I can put my designs up straight. So anyway, that's just a side note. But anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to sew these together row by row. I've got 5 blocks across and 4 blocks down. So that is a total of 20 blocks. And so we're going to sew them together just row by row. So let's go do that. So as you can see, I've got my first row here. This is the first block. And I am just going to put the second block to it. Now I want to keep in mind my seam allowances on the back and which direction they're going. So if they're both going the same way, like this one is, all I have to do is take this block and flip it over. So it still comes out the same way because these blocks can be flipped either way and they'll still look the same way. So I'm going to flip it over, and now my seam allowances are going in opposite directions. So I'm just going to match those up. I lied. Okay, this way. So I'm just going to match those up like so, and then sew these together with a 1/4 inch seam. And that way you have less bulk and they will go together very nicely. Here we go. Now I'm going to finger press all of this first row to my right. And then when I do the next row, I'll finger press them all to the left. That way when we sew the rows together, they'll match up really nicely. So now I'll take my next one, look at my seam allowances. That one's going up, that one is going down, and so this one is going up And we'll just put those together. And we'll just keep going like this. Okay, so there's the first row, just like that. I'm going to do the same thing to all of the 4 rows, and then we'll sew the rows together. Now when I sew my rows together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that these seams from each block nest up together, like so. And I'm just going to put a pin in where they are nesting, like that. I'm going to do that with each one. Hopefully you can see that, where each one nests up together. Get it just right so those seams match up with each row. Put a pin in there. So by the time I get to the end, everything will match up beautifully. And one more. And I like to put one pin in at the very end too, so that it doesn't flop around while I'm sewing. Okay. So then we just match up our starting point. And do a 1/4 inch seam all the way down, taking out the pins as we come to them. So then you have got 2 rows sewn together. So do that with all of your rows. So there you have it. Mine is all sewn together. It measures about 33 by 34.5, which is a really good baby size. But I need mine to be bigger. So I'm going to add some borders. And I think I'll do like a cream border as a first border, and then I'll do a wider border, and I will show you what that looks like when it's all finished. So there you have it. That's my finished project with a light border around the edge, and then a border with patterned fabric, the larger border, which I made a 5-inch border around the very edge, and then I'm going to back it with that same fabric. So thanks for joining me. I hope that you give this a shot and make it. The finished product is about 46 by 45 inches, and it was super beginner friendly. It's super easy to do, and it went really, really fast. So don't forget to like and subscribe to the Revelation Quilt channel, and be sure to hit the notification bell so you can be notified when new tutorials come out. So happy quilting!